Welcome to the Cosmic Cadence podcast. We are your hosts, Kate
and G. And this is the podcast where we decode the cosmic vibes of your favorite albums and the people that help bring them into the universe.
Hello, and welcome back to Cosmic Cadence. If you're watching this, I'm sitting weird because I'm trying not to give away the album that we're going to talk about. Because as you guys know by now, I love a theme. And today, we're talking about one of my personal favorite albums, but I actually happen to have some OG merch. So, okay, if you're watching, this is the reveal. But ta-da! If you're not watching, this is a Kelly Green, The Academy Is shirt, and this is OG. This is OG Hot Topic from 2005. Somehow I still fit in it. I don't know how, but we are talking today about The Academy Is almost here. Yes. And we have a special surprise today.
So today is the first ever time on this podcast where we will be joined by a guest. And our guest today is none other than the legend, the man himself, Johnny Minardi, who is an A&R extraordinaire and played very vital role, I would say, in this album's creation. We've been lucky enough to know Johnny and have been able to work with him probably for maybe a little over 8, almost 9 years at this point. So we're really excited to have him on the podcast. And, he was there in the time of when this record was created and helped be part of its rollout.
He knows the in and outs.
The down and outs. He knows the down and outs. And he is just filled with so many wonderful stories about this album.
And with that, we're going to bring on Johnny.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're really excited to talk about the album we were talking about today.
This is actually, we've done a couple from 2005 now. 2005 was a great year.
It really was.
It was.
So, Johnny, you might not know this, but I tend to go with a theme on this podcast because I have a hard time deciding what to wear. So I normally try to wear something that helps me with this album. And I have The Academy Is shirt on today because we are going to be talking about Almost Here. And this is actually an OG 2005 Hot Topic shirt.
Yes. Great condition, too, it looks like. I don't know how you kept it so pristine.
Yeah, it was hiding in my closet, so.
I love it. I remember Kelly Green was so associated with them and an early Fall Out Boy shirt. So in the web store was always those two shirts fighting for space. And I remember that color so specifically for this era.
I appreciate that because actually, it's funny. So in this bag, I actually kept only a handful of my 2005 shirts, and one of them is also a Taking Back Sunday. It's like bright red.
Yeah.
Because obviously most band shirts are black, and sometimes you want to switch it up.
I liked it. The bright colors were working back then. It was like right before the neon stuff.
That was one of my favorite eras too. I had so much merch even from that era, like Cobra especially. I think I had a sweatshirt, like a Cobra sweatshirt, one of those like bright purple. Yeah. Band's got to bring that back. Bring back color.
It's been 20 years. It's time for it to cycle through again.
Exactly.
So like Kate mentioned, we were talking about The Academy Is almost here, and we have Johnny on to help take us back to that time period and really dive into this record. So I guess before we kind of get into the chart of it all, Johnny, what was going on in 2005?
Wow. Yeah, leading into this album. So this was their debut full-length album, but prior to it, they had a couple singles and an EP. So I had grown up in Chicago, right in the northwest suburbs with the guys, or around the same areas as the guys, I should say. And I met them just through the local scene. And they had William Beckett had a solo project, Remember Maine, prior. So when I had a label out of my bedroom there, I was introduced to William and he had a couple songs ready. So we built that into a full length called The Last Place You Look. And then we put that out and it was going great. It was by far the best selling record I had ever put out at the time. I think it was our 5th release on the label. And then literally like months into this, he tells me and Tony Marino, who was my partner at the label at the time, he was like, hey, I'm going to start a band. And we're like, what? We finally like got something that was like semi-profitable at the record label that we were losing money every record because we had no idea what we were doing. We're just trying to put music out and see what happens. So I remember being really frustrated with him because I would be like, we would jump in the van and tour all over. And it was like, that was my full-time like thing. And Remember Maine was like our ticket where shows were going great. We were getting on shows. He's making money at merch every night. We were actually having a lot of fun with that. And then fast forward to him saying like, please just come see the band practice. And then we went to see the band practice in the original drummer's basement, and they played two songs. It was In Our Defense and Memento Mori, both from the previous thing. And they played those, they only had two songs. So they played those a couple times through. And I remember me and Tony left and we were like, damn it, those are really good. And we're like, this actually makes more sense than him with an acoustic guitar. Like this feels important. It was like right at the Taking Back Sunday, you know, early era of this thing starting to move with Movie Life and whatever. East Coast was ahead of the Chicago stuff at that point. And then basically we were like, okay, I think we like took them to a pizza place with a contract like days later, and then they signed and we did an EP together. And then when that EP came out, John Janik and Pete Wentz both were like, hey, we want them on Fueled by Ramen. We're starting this thing. Like, and so then we kind of all just like stayed close with that. And Mike and William from the band lived with me and Tony. So they were writing all these songs, and we can get more into that. But yeah, that was kind of the era where they were like definitely getting a lot better than the EP we put out for this album. And you could just see the like focus, and like they would like pour themselves over these parts, like little parts. And we're like, what do you like? They cared about the littlest things. And then I remember they left to go make the record. And then, yeah, when they came back, we were just like, we had never heard anything like this. So it was such a large jump for us mentally. And just as friends, we were just like emotionally like, wow, what did you just do? And it was a very like awesome time pre-release.
So how did William find the other band members?
I think through some high school, I think they were all like finishing high school at the time. Yeah, because I had just finished high school and I'm a couple years older. So I think they were like some mutual friends just through the scene and whatever, with a lot of little local venues where people would just go, and whoever was playing $5, you just go. And I think you're just kind of meeting like other bands. I think Mike Carden was in a band called Jody. Like there was all these local bands that all just knew each other. So I think they were just like jamming or had this idea for this project. I think they all loved like Coheed and Taking Back Sunday and all that. The Strider was always on, like those types of bands, Saves the Day. So I think they kind of just got together and were like, let's try to work through a band here. So I think just naturally through the scene at that point.
I love that. I always think about how, like, I feel like fate and luck has to play a part in that, because what are the chances? Like, I
Sure.
guess any business, it's hard to find the right business partner, but let alone like five band members, sometimes more, sometimes a little less. But like
Yeah.
the fact that you find that mix of people and it just magically happens to be, make this wonderful music. I
Yeah.
always think about that. I mean, I can't play music, so it's
Crazy.
to me, but yeah.
Yeah. Some also think about it this way. Like someone gave this example: when a band keeps its members for like 20 plus years, like when you're in high school and you start jamming in a basement, you don't realize these might be my business partners forever. Like
Yeah.
truly.
Right.
And that's not like think about high school right now, and I don't know everyone's experiences, but like you would never be able to every single day make every financial decision with those people. You just met them in a class or something. So it's this like very intriguing thought when like members leave. You're like, yeah, of course. Like you knew each other when you were like such a little kid. And so it's funny to think at that time, like you said, how do you find these people? You just kind of do. And then if it really clicks and you find kind of like your songwriting partner, then that's just magic at that point. And that's why I think it's so rare when something really works.
I know you said that this album was essentially written in your living room, so I'd love to hear more about that. And also, like, I guess
Sure.
where the album, if you know, like where the album concept came from and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think at the time, the scene of this genre around us, especially, was definitely like, I don't want to say like negative or like in an overtly competitive way, but it definitely wasn't this like everyone band together and go. And kind of we would watch the East Coast stuff with like early Bamboozle, which was Skate and Surf, and these other festivals, and we would go like just as fans, like we would drive out for them, and you would watch these like moments feel so big. So I think we were always trying to kind of like bring people in to build the scene out of it. So I think wasn't always well received. And especially this band, they weren't big. They weren't doing anything yet prior to this record, really. Maybe a little bit buzzy stuff around Chicago. But I think when you look at this record, there's a lot of like a chip on the shoulder, like underdog. There's a lot of like relationship stuff too. But I think there's general sentiments. This was like one of the first records that I felt wasn't all just being mad at an ex-girlfriend. It was like other concepts when you think of like them talking about the press, right? Like skeptics and true belief. Like there's all these like things, Black Mamba, like even the way it starts, you're like, whoa, like, can you say that? I remember feeling like, can you say that in a song? No one's gonna write about you. And they were like, it's kind of the point. They kind of haven't written about us yet anyway, so who gives a shit? So it's
Right.
kind of this like they flipped it on its head. And even just with, and there's certain like heavier subject matter and Down and Out, and like there's other stuff that when I heard this record, it felt like older people had written the concepts, but the energy was young. But I think that's just who they were, especially William and Mike, as they were like kind of figuring out the themes and the lyrics and everything. So I think it pulled from personal stuff or other stories that they had heard, whatever. But I think yeah, I'm like looking at the track list right now and I'm just like, my brain's jumping with all the different lyrics in there that I was like, I can't believe that these like 18-year-old kids were writing this stuff. It doesn't make even now it doesn't make sense to me when I think about it.
Well, you know what's fun? I feel like you say this often, but a lot of the albums we've talked about thus far, they have been debut albums, like Panic at the Disco,
Yeah.
and a lot of them have that energy. Like I feel like you
Yeah.
bring that up a lot.
Kind of like the chip
The
on the shoulder,
hardworking,
hard.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
had to cut through the noise kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I think those are the ones that work too, because everyone can relate to that more so than everything's always great all the time, especially like high school kids, So I think if you get the youth excited and they can relate to it, I don't know. There's definitely something to that in this genre, especially.
Definitely. And it stands the test of time because here we are talking about it 20 years later, which is crazy.
Totally.
Literally, like,
Totally.
okay, so when I listened to this album 2 or 3 times, for my notes, and I just had this moment in the car realizing like I'm singing, like I couldn't not sing the songs, and
Sure.
the words came back to me just
Mhm.
like that. So
Yeah, it's almost like I realized too in a couple of the albums we've done, like there's certain songs that they start playing and automatically it takes you back to where you were
Yes.
at that time. Like Slow Down is one of those songs for me, like where
Mm.
as soon as that guitar starts in the beginning, I'm just like instantly transported back to my high school bedroom in
Awesome.
2025, 2005.
how did you find the album or the band?
I think I knew the songs before I attached it to a band in a
Mhm.
weird way. Like I know a lot of my friends had their songs on their MySpace pages. So whenever I would like surf around and like click through to see if I was in anybody's top eight, I would hear songs. And it wasn't until maybe I think when they released About a Girl that I made the connection of like, oh, this is the Academy is. And they do
Right.
all these songs before and all of that. But I definitely knew the music. I just didn't really dive into like figure out who the band was until a little later.
That's fair.
Sure.
I actually, this is one because sometimes when we go back to these albums that obviously were 20 plus years ago, it is hard to remember exactly how I found out about it. Like I might generally remember, oh, I saw this on Pure Volume or MySpace or whatever.
Yeah.
This one I have a very specific memory. And it's funny because I've talked about it before. So my high school, like I don't know why, but I didn't know many people at my high school that liked the kind of music that I liked, but grade school, I actually had a lot of kids in my class, I guess, that had great music taste. So
That's awesome.
yeah, a lot of great music that way. But this one specifically, my friend's mom was driving me home, carpooling essentially, and he was putting the CD in the CD player in the car, and I saw the artwork on it, like the very bold
Mm.
yellow and green, very eye-catching, as you said with the colors. And so that caught my eye. And then he starts the CD, and we probably got like maybe halfway through. And when we got to the phrase that pays, and then into Black Mamba, which were two of my favorites, I was like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
need this album. And back in the day, I was too nervous to ask what it was. So as I did, I went home and I Googled, I think one of the lines from Black Mamba, and I was like,
Sure.
Edie with deer and yellow sun on the cover. Like that.
Yeah.
I used to do it back then because we didn't have Shazam, thank God for
Yeah.
Shazam.
Yeah, you could now. You gotta really dig.
That was my favorite invention, actually. Favorite app. But that's how I had to do it back in the day. But I'm curious, Johnny, what were some of your favorite songs?
My favorite songs, easily, I would say Almost Here, Black Mamba. Those are the two that I go to immediately when I think of this album. Those are the like just feelings that I love. I actually really like the back half of the record. I think that's the last five songs on it. I guess six songs if you include, yeah, Black Mama's six songs. It just doesn't stop for me, you know. And I remember when the Phrase That Pays video and just that intro, it's iconic to me. It's like I feel like bands weren't doing parts like that yet. So I think that, yeah, and then Almost Here, where it's like basically two separate songs jammed, is like a really unique thing, especially how they end the record, like with so much energy. Usually at that time, everyone put an acoustic song at the end of the record. So they like flipped it and went the highest energy part of the record, where it's like a 40-second song on the back of a 2-minute song. And that part, I was just like, wow, I need more of this band. I need this to continue. So it was those were the ones that made me always feel like the band figured it out.
And what was your, I guess, involvement in the writing process? Like, obviously, they were very close to you. So, how did that work?
Right.
Yeah, while they were in your living room.
Yeah, I was close to it just physically, but definitely not at all involved in writing anything. It's funny to think now how a lot of records are made. This record was written by the band in the living room, like acoustic guitars, notepads, you know, probably 4-track recorder, whatever they're using at that time to capture little parts of ideas over and over. And yeah, I think, you know, my involvement was actually funny in the way of like we had a long hallway of bedrooms, and Mike and William shared a room, and it was one of those moments where it was like just a bunch of young people living together, and they were a fucking mess all the time. So I remember so clearly how many times they would leave their shit everywhere because they wrote in the living room. So everything in the living room was always scattered and rearranged. And I anyone that knows Tony really well, who was their tour manager for the first, actually probably the whole career, the first three albums, he basically would get home from work. Him and I would get home from work. He would literally take everything from the living room and either put it on their beds or block their doorway so they couldn't get into their bedroom until they took the things and put them away. But that led to a lot of issues because very much the guys would come home late after whatever, and it'd be dark as hell. We were all sleeping,
Oh, no.
and they would trip over everything all the time. So this became a very hostile moment. So, but yeah, it was just my closeness to it was like almost the surrounding nature of everything. And every now and again they would pull us in, or you know, I'd overhear and I'd go listen, whatever it was. It was very open. It wasn't like a secret thing, but it was like, oh yeah, they're writing whatever, leave them alone. And then sometimes they would come and ask like, oh hey, what do you think of this? Or like, does this feel right? Or if we went to and it was like very specific things, like I was saying, like in the Bridge of Down and Out where they name drop a bunch of like album titles, like those things were very like thought through of like influence and like what they grew up on and what was like making them want to like take this jump to the next level as a band. So it was just kind of being a sounding board or a supporter, or like if there were songs that didn't make the record or parts that didn't make it, that they were just like we were kind of honest with each other, I guess. Just as a fan, I didn't know anything at all outside of like what I enjoyed and what I didn't, but I was like, this is cool that you guys are so passionate about this and that, right? So it was cool to just be like a friend on the couch while they're in the other corner of the living room writing a song.
I love that. Well, it sounds like you provided the environment, you know,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's
Sure.
very underrated, important part of an album.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, they were younger than us, so we had the apartment and we all kind of roommated together.
Sounds fun, honestly.
Yeah.
It was awesome, actually. I do think back to those times. There's another funny thing is when Janik was courting them to sign to Fueled by Ramen, he came out and slept on our couch
Wow.
and stayed with us so that he could just be around kind of the environment as what you were saying. So it was like a very funny tight knit corner where we were all in this little apartment, which again, the apartment gets shouted out of sick of this fucking apartment. So it's like, that was real because everyone was on top of each other.
I love that so much. Do you have any photos from that? I feel like I need a photo of this.
I probably do. I'd have to dig it up because they're definitely like actual photos that I have that aren't on the internet. But every now and again, Siski and myself and Carden will get on a text chain, and like when someone finds like a box of photos, and it'll just be like sending them through because it's just fascinating to like think that that was that long ago.
Mm.
But it doesn't feel long ago in my brain. So the older you get, I'm like, wait, that was like 10 years ago. No, it was a long time ago.
Times
Yeah.
two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
But speaking of,
Yes, speaking of time and moments in time, I think we're going to dive into the birth chart section of the episode. So I know you're not totally versed in astrology, so definitely
Yes,
walk
we'll
you
walk you
through
through
all
it.
of this.
I'm new.
But before we begin, I have a little question for you. No pressure. Do you
Mhm.
remember the release date for this album?
I do.
Hit us.
February 8th, 2005. It was the first
Ah,
record I worked at Fueled by Ramen.
love it. If you look on Spotify, as we talked about in a previous record,
Is it wrong?
it says January 1st, 2005, as a lot of
Well,
records from
apparently, I mean,
2005.
Oh, just
July,
defaults.
if an album is from like definitely 2005, that era, but I've realized because I was listening to all these albums and I actually kind of knew this beforehand too, but
Mhm.
Spotify will just default to January 1st, 2005 or
Yeah.
whatever year it is.
But yes, indeed, the release date for this album was February 8th, 2005.
Which I did know. I did know this one because normally, so Johnny, normally me and Geneva have different ways of thinking for this part. So actually, we should explain to you the concept here. So we talk about an album's big three.
So yes, the big three birth chart is three signs that make up who you are, and it's only three out of many others, but we focus on these three because ultimately together it kind of speaks to your personality. Your sun sign, which is a sign that most people are familiar with, your moon sign, which kind of is who you are when no one is watching and how you feel about things, your emotions, and then your rising sign or ascendant sign is how you present yourself to the world. So we'll start with the sun sign because
Yes.
that is based on the day you
The
were
core.
born. In this case, the day that the album was born. So it is actually an Aquarius sun, which was interesting to me because even though I knew the release date, just listening to the energy of it, it was giving me like summertime Leo energy. And just given that
Mm.
Yes.
the opposite of Aquarius is Leo, seeing that's an Aquarius is very interesting.
Okay, I love that you said that because so my thing is normally for me, I will assign a sun sign if I don't know the date of just like the vibes that I go off of, but Geneva is a little more analytical, if you will, and she's like, no, the date is this date, that's what it is. This
Right.
was an anniversary and I knew the date, so I will be in agreement that it is
Sure.
Aquarius sun, but so funny. Literally, this album is so Leo to me,
Yeah.
which we'll explain more about that. But attention started and automatically I just got a download. I was like, this is Leo. And Leo as a sign is very it's a summertime sign. So usually your birthday is between what, like July or no, yeah, July and August.
Yeah, end of July, early August, like midway through.
Mm.
But Leos are very bold and it's a fire sign. So it's
Mhm.
kind of known for, like not to say aggressive, but like loud
Mm.
in your face. That's the fire signs. They're very um out there versus a sign like water signs where water signs, that could be a little more
Reserved, kind of,
intellectual, like
yeah,
in your head.
yeah.
Versus
Sure.
out there. So for me, talking about this Leo energy, I was going to place it as a Leo rising, the way that the album presents itself, because
Sure.
the artwork is very bold, as we've already talked about. It's very eye-catching, but a lot of the concepts on the album also gave me Leo of obviously. So Leos are also known to be kind of performers and entertainers and whatnot. And obviously a good amount of this album talks about being in a band and whatnot. So that kind of related for me.
Mhm.
And I would say as well, there's almost like Leos come across as self-assured, like they can have insecurities, but they come across very self-assured.
Mhm.
So agreed on the Aquarius sun, but definitely this album had so much Leo for me, and I would place it as a Leo rising.
Cool. One thing I'll add to that too is especially listening to your stories, Johnny, Leos are very loyal.
Mhm.
And I think there was like kind of that loyalty that you guys had as friends too, especially when you talked
Yeah.
about taking them in, looking after them, giving them a place to kind of develop this record, and you guys are still
Sure.
friends to this day. So it speaks to that Leo energy as well.
I feel that.
Sure.
And I definitely did get well, I guess because I knew it was an Aquarius sun, I did get Aquarius energy on the album, but I think for me, the moon was hard. I do feel like this energy, the album in general has a lot of fire energy. So I was gonna either say a double Leo or Aries, or I got a tinge of Scorpio. So
Interesting.
you know what? I'm just gonna go. It's gonna, for me, my guess here is going to be Aquarius sun and a double Leo.
Okay.
I
Johnny, you
like that.
don't have to if you don't want to, but do you want
I got nothing on that. The only wrench I was going to throw in was based on when you were saying certain months, Kate. The record was written
Hmm.
and recorded in those windows of what you were saying.
Okay, so
Okay.
I'm glad you brought
Very
that up because
So
excited.
that
which date do you care about? The one where the world heard it or when it was created?
so it all of it matters. And we talked about
Okay.
this a lot on our podcast
Mhm.
before because a lot of
This
times
is breaking news here.
this is literally breaking news because a lot of times we find that the ascendant sign and the moon sign could maybe, while it doesn't match up with when the album was released, we always wonder
Right.
maybe that's when they were writing the record. So
Right.
we just confirmed, and
Yeah.
now I'm gonna reveal
Well,
things.
I
I'm
have
gonna
one other thing to say.
go
So
ahead.
we said this is why it's so exciting. Um, so we said this in a previous episode, but I feel like it bears repeating. So we did the math, and essentially in in guessing these three signs, there are, I forgot the exact number, but over 1,000
Possibilities.
possibilities of what it could end up being.
Wow.
That's a
Mm.
lot. So it's funny though, even like we're excited even when we get one of those signs right. And I think it is because, intuitively we're feeling exactly what you're saying. Like maybe it's not to say that that album doesn't have that energy. It just might be we're feeling the core essence of what the
Right.
like the substance of the album versus
Yeah.
when it was put out
The
to be,
date.
Or even the birth chart or the star sign or the sun sign of the person writing it. So we can get into that too if you remember previous
True. That
days.
goes many layers there.
But the rising is indeed Leo. So
Okay.
that is an amazing that we got that right, but also amazing that it just comes
Yeah.
through so strongly in the music on this record.
This is what blows my mind though. Like the fact that that's right.
Mhm. Crazy.
This is why people should look into astrology. And actually, I was going to say too, like I know we talked about the colors on the album cover.
Right.
Also, like just the imagery, right? Because there's like a sun and whatnot. That's very summer. It evokes summer.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, very much, very bright and airy, even though, yeah, the record came out in a February month in Chicago, which is like the coldest it gets almost.
For the moon sign, you were close when you said it's a double,
Mhm.
but it's not a double Leo. It is a double Aquarius.
Interesting. Okay.
So airy cover, Aquarius is an
Yeah.
air sign.
Johnny, look at that. You know astrology and you don't even know it.
I'm like, get in there. Yeah, got it. Picking up.
It's an air sign.
Yeah.
But it makes sense because so air signs are known to be very um what's the word? Like there's a lot of communication. They love people, they love talking.
Intellectual,
Mhm.
which I think kind of too, where you were saying before, where it's not just love songs on this record. They have a chip on their
Yeah.
shoulder. They're talking about the industry. They're calling out press before press even had a chance to even talk about them and all of that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of challenging the status quo, which Aquarius tend to do.
Yeah.
So it's again amazing that like all that energy is really felt on this record and it aligns with what we have found to be the birth chart.
I love that so much.
You guys are on it.
We try. Okay, so now what we do, so now that we know this album is a Aquarius sun, Aquarius moon, and a Leo rising, now we put a song for that sign.
Yeah.
Would you like to start?
Yes. So for me, and I guess now I have to switch it because when I was listening to Attention, it was giving me Aries, but I
Hmm.
think that could also be a Leo sign, like represent that
Mhm.
Leo energy, because who demands attention more than a Leo, And I think that first song, opening up the record, kind of being like, we're here now, listen to us, pay attention to us kind of thing,
Look at us. Yeah.
gives that energy.
It's funny, I got like immediately a download when I was listening to it. But then I really like the song title literally is attention. And
Right.
people are known to like, hey, look at me. Like they do love attention. Okay, so we're talking rising. I had a ton, like literally, let's see, I have one, two, three, four. I had 5 to 6 guesses on this album that were Leo. So had to be Leo. I will say on Season, what is interesting, I guess I want to talk about the lyrics, some of the lyrics of the songs. There's a line in that song that says, "We're shaping up to be all you wish you could have been." So that felt very, self-assured and whatnot. But what I thought was interesting is that so Leo and Aquarius are both fixed signs, which means they're not very good with change. They don't like change. And this album is kind of about change, like literally
Totally.
and changing. So I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase the question, but like was that a part of who they were as people? Like what's William Beckett's birthday?
February, I forget the date. Close to the album release. I know that.
So
Oh,
he's
so he's
probably an
probably
Aquarius
Aquarius,
too.
yeah.
Yeah. So that makes more sense lyrically for some of the themes.
hmm Actually, that brings up a good point. On this album, I feel like we should check the Mercury sign.
Mm.
So the Mercury sign is basically how you communicate and how you speak. Is it Aquarius?
It's also Aquarius.
You see this stuff? It's just so
That's lining itself up. Let me see his exact date because
yeah. If that checks out, this is another hypothesis you're helping us prove because we've been
February 11th.
that's
It's
an Aquarius.
Aquarius. Wow.
That's insane. Okay, so we've been noticing on a lot of these things. I think you called it out, even with the Halsey one that we've done. Um, the Mercury a lot has been the sign of the primary lyricist, which makes sense because it's the way that they're speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and that comes through enough just by you knowing what? The lyrics, the songs, the vibe. What is that? How do you put that together? Because you're clearly guessing it before you knew he was.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's kind of a combination of
yeah.
it. Yeah.
It's almost like an
Mm.
intuition, but I guess it's like the analytical part of it is knowing how the signs operate. And
Mm.
when we are listening to the songs, a lot of times, at least for me, like when I'm listening to a song, one line in particular will jump out and be like, oh, that's so this sign.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I know we're talking about Leo. There was another one. Well, I guess two. Okay, so skeptics and true believers. There's the lines, would you believe me if I said I didn't need you? Because I wouldn't believe you if you said the same to me. Like that's a very Leo statement.
Yeah.
Because Leos would be like, of course you need me.
Yeah. You need me, I don't need you.
Yeah.
Wild.
And also,
That's a heavy statement.
that's how it is, But for Almost Here, I'm gonna say, well, since you said attention, I think I might say that Almost Here is my Leo song.
That's a good one. That was my second option.
Yeah, because it talks a lot about being a performer, but also the line, I got my pride and I'll let you sleep tonight. Leos love their pride, and also pride just, like a group of lions, I think is called a pride.
Mhm.
And lions,
Right.
so Leo is like the lion is the animal.
Based on that, yeah.
What do you got for Aquarius?
Okay, so for Aquarius, I was going to say Down and Out.
Yeah, that was mine as well.
Very, very Aquarius. I know we have two to assign. So I'm gonna put this one as I think the sun. But it's funny. So the reason I say Down and Out is Aquarius is, as I said, like Aquariuses are very social and whatnot. And there's the part where they're naming everyone, and until today, did not put two and two together that you are the Johnny.
Yeah.
Did
There
they
you go.
that they were writing you in there? Or did you?
No, they showed us when they got home from the studio, and then they were like played us the record, and we listened to that song, and we were like, "Wait, what?" And it was like, and then Garrett's another friend of theirs that is mentioned right after us, and then it goes into naming all the records that we've all loved and talked like kind of grown up with. So it was definitely a weird like feel of just like, wait, why did you do that? You know what I mean? You're kind of like, don't do that. Like that does you don't do that in songs, but then it's become like such a big part of the song. And like, as the band was growing, Tony would tour with them all the time. I'd jump on the road with them every now and again. And it was so weird, the like lore that followed that. Like if Tony and I were at the same show and people saw us, it would be a thing. And I'd always be like, this is so weird. Like I'm just seeing my friends in a band. But yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I had no idea though. One of the coolest surprises for sure.
That was so, yeah, that like just clicked for me today. I think for you as
Same,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've listened to it
So
so many
funny.
times and never until like again, but I think that's a part of this too of when we are listening to these records to do these podcasts, it's almost looking at it in a way you haven't before. It's like you're paying attention to things that maybe you've
Yeah.
listened to a million times but never caught. And that was
Hmm.
definitely one where it's like, oh, I know Johnny.
Yeah. So funny.
There you go.
Okay, and then so what did I said that was my sun? Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. So for moon, I will say I think slow down. Because moon sign is the way that you're thinking, and there's the line in that one, I'm not like them, I won't buy in. And as we a little bit talked about, Aquariuses are very rebellious and also like, I'm gonna march to the beat of my own drum. So that one stuck out to me as Aquarius.
Nice. So I would have said down and out for my Aquarius moon.
Hmm.
But for Aquarius Sun, I would have gone with classified. So I think
Mm.
same thing of like marching to the beat of your own drum and kind of like
Mhm.
again fighting against the status quo and doing something a little different and also searching for something different than what you are kind of a part of, or I
Hmm.
guess, or like the Aquarius deal with society. They want the best for people. They love humanity. I'm an Aquarius rising, and I do not love the people, as I tell but I'm supposed to. But they always want better for humanity and more. And I think on that song, there's kind of like an energy of kind of looking for something more and being going against the grain,
Hmm.
which is Aquarius for me, I guess.
Yeah, and that's what I actually love like about albums during this time is I feel like just in general bands were taking a bit more risks than bands maybe today are. Like I feel like bands today go more based on a formula
Hmm.
versus bands back then were, even like their on-stage antics. Like I feel like bands were flailing all over the stage and whatnot.
Yeah, it does feel more subdued now, no question.
But I was gonna ask, so did the band like when they were writing this album, did they have goals in mind of like, oh, we want to be at an arena, like
Oh
how
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is not an accident for sure of like how big the record sounds. And I think it was one of the first records I remember having the vocals be so much more out front, which is like more typical in like a pop song. But like the band was still obviously built like kind of from the scene of the like, pop punk, emo, whatever you call that thing. But yeah, I remember getting mixes back because by then I lived in Florida. They recorded over the summer. It was being mixed all fall, and then I lived in Florida. I moved there October 1st, 4 months before this record came out. And I remember sitting on Janek's couch in the office, and he was getting mixes back. And I remember being like, "Man, these vocals are like way more like just louder than other records." And he was just like, "Yeah, that's the point." And I'm like, "Oh." All right. So like there was this thing where like they had, had a plan together with him and the band and management to yeah, for sure push the boundary on like making sure this is like a bigger sound and a hopeful like mainstream crossover moment. This is like right before From Under the Cork Tree, but after Take This to Your Grave, where I think the Where Is Your Boy moment on Take This to Your Grave unlocked it, made it okay for bands to have like a pop sensibility to them. And just knowing like kind of what William was trying to do in his voice, all that just felt more pop oriented than, most of their contemporary touring band, like companions were definitely more like gritty alternative versions where Academy has felt like kind of like the pop sensibility was on top of all of it.
And I feel like I'm assuming also being in Chicago, like having that influence, that was actually, if you could speak, I guess, a little more to that as well, like what the scene specifically in Chicago was at that time.
Yeah, I think the stuff that we had grown up on, like the era prior, was like Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that was like kind of more mainstream. But then shortly after was like Alkaline Trio, Lawrence Arms, like very much more like punk rock. But Alkaline Trio had this like sense of melody to them that was so much better than I think I had heard at the time. And then again, we took so much influence just as like music fans from the East Coast stuff that was happening with though, Taking Back Sunday, Brand New, Movie Life, all that stuff, Coheed, Strider, all of those bands were so great for us that we were like trying to pull the version of that in. Someone explained it to me once really well about like a Saves the Day, Thursday, etc. basement show, and then like why Fall Out Boy was the way they sounded like just themselves, even though there's clear influence from like Through Being Cool and a couple of those predecessors. So I think there's something about a Chicago, like, I don't know, whatever was going on at the time. And a lot of it, I'll give credit to Matt Skiba just because, like, lyrically was like psychotic compared to most bands. And then vocal melody just was always so much catchier than every other band that was on, the Vagrant, early Vagrant stuff. So I think, yeah, I don't know. I think this band just pulled from all those different pieces of it as influence to like kind of find this footing.
I would be interested. We should look up later, like the astrology of even there's astrology for like the locations,
Right, yeah.
Who
For
knows?
Yeah.
There's maybe
Chicago.
some magic going on in Chicago at that
You
point.
never know. Yeah, there's so many younger bands that just didn't break out of it, but then it was like Plain White T's, Lucky Boys Confusion, like bands that did go on to like major label moments, Spitalfield, like a bunch of stuff around them. Audition was like right after them. So it's like the scene was like like exploding. Hush Sound, October Fall, like a bunch of Fueled by Ramen bands, like one after the other right then and there.
I will say I always have Jersey pride because I feel like so many great bands came out of New Jersey, but Chicago definitely is like
It's
right
rivaled in
up
New
there.
Jersey.
It
Yeah.
was right after because it's like Jersey had the like basement, Thursday, My Chem, that stuff. And then a little bit they did it again where the like a couple of years later. And then Chicago, I think, had a run of like 10, 15 great ones that even that band June on Victory was like
I remember
such a great band early on. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of those that like they had like one or two records, but never like did so much national stuff. But I think they were impactful in certain ways.
I was like I loved the audition, but I felt like they never
Totally.
like got to that level of popularity.
Yeah, I agree. Great band though. But yeah, I think I thought it was cool because it was like even in the slow down video, like that's Butch Walker's house that they filmed in. Like there's like little pieces of like that were so big to us because we were like, oh my God, Butch Walker. Like, and he became a part of like their little crew after that. I think this band had the best touring setup I've ever seen from like early on before this record, from like Less Than Jake to Fall Out Boy to Something Corporate to, I mean, Armor for Sleep. They had like every great, like there was no coming home because it was like, they would be like, the Armor for Sleep tour is right after Something Corporate, but you only have 2 days. And you're like, let's just head to California. It's like, we didn't see the guys forever. I don't think they headlined on this album for like 2 years after it came out because they got so many incredible tours that they couldn't say no to. So I remember that feeling too of always trying to like capture that for young bands we work with and stuff that I'm just like, man, they just like one after another got asked to do the best tours. Thankfully for them because it set up the next 10 years of their career.
I am curious, do you know where, like, I love, obviously it's one of my favorite tracks, but also the album title. Like, where did
Mhm.
Almost Here come from? Was it that of like they were touring so much and whatnot?
I don't know how literal it was. Again, I think they got shit on a lot for the EP that we had put out because everyone just would call it like a Taking Back Sunday ripoff and all that. So I think that Almost Here was almost like, this is a total guess, that it was like truly like a middle finger of like they're arriving, and like kind of like actually getting to the place that everyone thought maybe they couldn't, if that makes sense. Because I think that a lot of the reviews kind of compared them too much to a watered down Taking Back Sunday or something. And I bet if they go back and listen to those songs, I bet they would be like, damn, like those weren't our best songs. I love them. They have sentimental meaning to me, but I understand why a national magazine that's covering every great artist, especially at that time, was like the records were incredible. When you're competing with those, clearly you're gonna like kind of get knocked down a rung or two. So I think Almost Here was kind of like a statement in that sense. I mean, even at the, like I said, at the end when it's like really picks up, that's what I feel when I think of this record, of like that sentiment of like arriving, like accomplishing, like showing maybe people that didn't think you could ever accomplish that you did, and you're there.
Love
Yeah.
that.
I mean, that reflects like that actually, that's a great summary almost of the album. I mean, it's the album title, so it makes sense.
Right.
Summary of the energy overall of the album. Like I feel like that really came
Sure.
through,
Yeah.
even in our guesses. So
Yeah. And I think on that note, we'll start wrapping up this wonderful episode with our guest, Johnny Minardi. And since it is a special episode, the songs that we match to the zodiac signs, we end up putting on a playlist. I won't put pressure for you to match it to a zodiac sign, but do you want to give us 2 songs that we can include from you?
Yeah, we got to go Black Mamba and we got to go Almost Here. And if you already had that, because I think you mentioned it, then I would go Phrase That Pays.
sweet.
Awesome.
Those are 2 of my favorites. I will say I have one other favorite that I did not talk about, which is Checkmate. That was like, I love the energy of it.
Yeah.
I know that was like one of the only music videos I think we've talked about this before. I don't know why. I just like didn't watch music videos back in the day as much as I should.
Yeah.
But that was one that I do remember. So
Yeah.
I remember it so clearly. It also wasn't like a music video. It was like, here's a camera, you have to turn in a video in a couple days. And you're like, okay, that's that music video treatment.
I mean, I feel like that
It
like
works.
DIY. Yeah, I was gonna say the DIY back.
We should be doing that all the time because it's
Honestly.
the actual true feeling of what that band was doing at the time. Like, yeah, they're not, I don't know, just like young kids out in the wild in a weird way. But yeah, that song actually is like the only, not only, but one of the ones that where, like I was saying, most of the record's not about being mad at an ex-girlfriend. That one very much is the
Mhm.
like epitome of the genre. I hate you because you're not with me anymore energy. So,
That was my teen angst breakup song.
yeah,
So
very angry.
I love that. Do you know your zodiac sign?
I don't.
Oh, okay. So we can help you figure that out.
Sure.
Okay, what is your birthday?
July 2nd.
Okay, so you are a Cancer.
Yeah. Water
Cancer.
sign like us.
You are a water sign, fellow water sign. Cancers are very intuitive, very nurturing.
Very caring, also very protective. Like I feel like, and I think this describes you to a T, where you get along with everybody, but when it comes time to defend those that are important and you care about, like the pincers come out.
That's nice. That sums it up.
Yeah. Because I think you said the album was written kind of in like June to July, right?
Recorded in June, July of 2004. So spring, written kind of winter, spring leading into the album.
I feel like, well, because your birthday probably would have fallen in that, right? So
Yep, while they were in Florida.
Yeah.
a little piece of your cancerness is in there.
Yeah.
I'm in there. I bled into it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I learned a lot about it as well. So it's funny to revisit it from another angle. Very cool perspective on the like feeling of a song and being able to pull that out of it.
Honestly, like that is what's so exciting to me. You literally proved 2 of our hypotheses.
Yeah.
Hypotheses?
We feel validation.
Yeah, we do.
Sure. Well, I had to text Siski during it to know when it was recorded, and he said those dates. And then he said, I remember we finished the record, drove directly to Knights of Columbus to see Gatsby's American Dream, then Minnesota to start the Believers Never Die tour with Fall Out Boy, Armored for Sleep, and Bayside.
Yeah.
So
I
that is like finish the record, go see one of your favorite bands at home, and then start the biggest tour you've ever been on.
I love
I'm
that.
like, there you go.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate you both.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you so much for listening in, and thank you, of course, to our very special first ever guest, Johnny Minardi. If you want to learn more about Johnny, follow him on socials. We'll put those in the description. As we said, 2005, amazing year for music. I feel like for at least people that I've met that like the Academy is, their entry was more so about a girl. So this is obviously a bit earlier than that one. So check it out if you haven't, and it might become your new favorite Academy is record.
Yeah. Till next time.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Cosmic Cadence podcast. If you like what you heard, please take the time to subscribe and like, rate, and review wherever you listen. It really helps us out.
You can also find us on socials at Cosmic Cadence Pod on all platforms. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you next time.